Number 3. Zodiac Killer. An unidentified serial killer who operated in Northern California in the late 1960s went by the nickname the Zodiac Killer. It has been said that the case is the most well-known unsolved murder case in American history, influencing popular culture and inspiring amateur detectives to work on the case. Between December 1968 and October 1969, the Zodiac systematically murdered 5 people in San Francisco Bay Area, carrying out his crimes in suburban, urban, and rural areas. His known attacks occurred in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the actual city of San Francisco. He specifically targeted young couples and a single male cab driver. 2 of his attempted victims survived. The Zodiac, who allegedly claimed to have killed 37 people, has also been connected to a number of unsolved cold cases, some of which took place in Southern California or elsewhere out of state. The Zodiac came up with the nickname when he sent out a string of taunting letters and cards to the local newspapers, threatening to go on murderous rampages and detonate bombs if they did not publish them. The murderer claimed to be gathering his victims as slaves for the afterlife in some of the letters that contained cryptograms or ciphers. 2 of the 4 ciphers he created are still unsolved, and one was only cracked in the year 2020, although many theories have been put forth regarding who the murderer was. Arthur Allen, a former elementary school teacher and convicted sex offender who passed away in 1992, was the only suspect ever publicly named by law enforcement. Despite stopping their written correspondence around 1974, the Zodiac's case sparked intense interest around the world and has continued to do so ever since. The case was declared inactive by the San Francisco Police Department in April 2004, but it was later reopened before March of 2007. In addition, the case is still pending in the counties of Solano and Napa, as well as the city of Vallejo. Since 1969, the Zodiac murders have been the subject of an open case file maintained by the California Department of Justice. Number 2. The West Mesa Bone Collector. At least 19 women and girls who were on the streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico, vanished between 2003 and 2006. Most of them were Latina sex workers in their 20s, and for years, no one knew what happened to them. Then, in February 2009, a local who was out with her dog in Albuquerque's West Mesa neighborhood made the horrifying discovery of a bone sticking out of the ground that resembled a human femur. When investigators dug deeper, they found more than one person had been buried at the location at the West Mesa close to 118th Street Southwest. The bones of 11 girls and women who had disappeared between 2003 and 2005 were identified over the course of the following year by the Albuquerque Police Department. The fact that they were all buried together suggests that a serial killer, later dubbed the West Mesa Bone Collector, was responsible for their deaths. But 10 years later after the discovery, detectives are still unable to determine who killed them, and they still haven't located the 8 other missing women who disappeared in 2003, 2005, and 2006. Although a serial killer was initially thought to be responsible for the killings, a sex trafficking organization has since been suspected of being involved. An anonymous tip to the APD and the FBI led to an identification of a Central American suspect in connection with the murders. In addition, police have the reason to believe a sex trafficking ring operating out of Texas, which is close by, is involved. The ring allegedly targets sex workers at festivals and other gatherings in the Southwest, the South, and the West of the United States, particularly those that are regularly scheduled events like the State Fair in New Mexico, where there is usually more traffic. Numerous cities including Denver, Colorado, El Paso, and Killeen in Texas, as well as Las Vegas in Nevada, are all involved in this small piece of a human trafficking ring. And on February 2, 2022, the 13th anniversary of the discovery of the first remains tied to the West Mesa murders, Police investigators and other city officials are making a plea to the public for new information that could help solve the case. Alongside case specialists and FBI officials, the Albuquerque police chief and mayor held a news conference on the notorious cold case, saying, "The only way this case is going to be solved is with our community's help, or even the communities around us that might know something." And then also saying, "We need new information on this case that is going to lead to it getting solved." Nevertheless, the case is still an open and active investigation. And number 1, Jack the Ripper. Most of us have heard of the Ripper, but besides the killings, the mystery of the Ripper goes beyond the killings themselves, such as historical facts being blended with folklore, pseudo-history, and hoaxes. The Ripper was heavily involved in the East End of London's impoverished areas near Whitechapel in 1888. The murderer was referred to as the Whitechapel Murderer and Leather Apron in both criminal case files and recent journalistic accounts. Attacks credited to Jack the Ripper typically targeted women who were involved in prostitution and lived and worked in the East End of London. Prior to the mutilations of the abdomen, the throats were also cut. At least 3 of the victims had their internal organs removed, which raised the possibility that the murderer knew something about anatomy or surgery. In September and October 1888, there were more claims that the murders were connected, and the media outlet in Scotland Yard received a lot of letters from the people claiming to be the murderer. The term Jack the Ripper was first used in a letter that was published in the media and claimed to be written by the murderer. It is generally accepted that the letter was a hoax, and it may have been created by journalists in an effort to generate more interest in the story and boost readership for the publications. Half of a preserved human kidney, allegedly taken from one of the victims, was enclosed with the From Hell letter that George Lusk of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee received. Due to the extraordinary brutality of the murders and extensive media coverage of the crimes, the public began increasingly start believing that a single serial killer by the name Jack the Ripper was responsible. The Ripper gained widespread and enduring international notoriety as a result of extensive newspaper coverage, and the legend grew. Police were unable to establish a direct link between all 11 brutal killings that occurred in the Whitechapel and Spitalfields between 1888 and 1891, and the homicides of 1888. The killings remained unsolved, and the legends that surrounded them eventually blended historical facts with folklore and pseudo-history to capture the public's imagination up until this day.